The crystalline spires of the Alterian capital gleamed under twin suns as Princess Lyra made her way through the crowded diplomatic quarter. 20 years had passed since that terrible day when pirates had attacked her transport vessel, yet she remembered every detail with painful clarity. The screams of her guards, the acrid smell of burning metal, and most vividly, the face of the human who had saved her life. Today marked the first formal diplomatic meeting between the Alterian Empire and the human colonies. Lyra, now the crown princess and lead ambassador, had volunteered for this historic occasion. Her advisors questioned her enthusiasm for dealing with what they considered a primitive species, but they could never understand her true motivation. Ambassador Jake Miller stepped from the human shuttle, his weathered face scanning the assembled Alterian dignitaries. At 45, he carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen too much of the galaxy's darker corners. His modest diplomatic uniform contrasted sharply with the elaborate robes and ceremonial armor of his hosts. Princess, Lyra felt her breath catch. The years had added lines to his face and silver to his hair, but those steady brown eyes were unmistakable. She had dreamed of this moment for 2 decades, wondering if she would ever see him again, wondering if he even remembered the terrified young alien girl he had rescued. The formal introductions proceeded with typical diplomatic ceremony. Lyra maintained her composure as various officials exchanged pleasantries and outlined the agenda for the coming negotiations. But her attention remained fixed on Jake, who showed no sign of recognition as he was presented to each member of the Alterian delegation. When her turn came, she stepped forward with regal bearing. Ambassador Miller, I am Princess Lyra, heir to the Alterian throne and your counterpart in these proceedings. Jake bowed respectfully, his expression polite but distant. Your Highness, it's an honor to meet you. I look forward to our discussions. The formal words stung more than she had expected. Of course he wouldn't remember, she told herself. To him, she had been just another victim in what was probably one of many rescues throughout his military career. The scared child hiding behind debris while pirates ransacked her ship meant nothing compared to the elegant alien princess standing before him now. The first day of negotiations proceeded smoothly. Jake proved to be an skilled diplomat, balancing humanity's interests with genuine respect for Alterian customs and concerns. Lyra found herself impressed by his knowledge of their culture and his careful attention to protocol. Still, the personal distance between them felt like an unbridgeable barrier. That evening, Lyra stood alone on the balcony of her private chambers, watching the city lights twinkle below. The human delegation was housed in a nearby complex, and she could see lights in their windows. Somewhere among them was the man who had changed her life, apparently unaware of their shared history. A soft chime announced a visitor. Lyra turned to find Jake Miller standing in her doorway, having been escorted by her guards. He looked different somehow, less formal despite still wearing his diplomatic attire. Your Highness, I apologize for the late hour, but I was hoping we might speak privately, he said. Lyra gestured for him to enter, her heart racing. Of course. Ambassador, please join me on the balcony. They stood side by side in comfortable silence for a moment, looking out over the capital. Finally, Jake spoke, his voice softer than it had been during the official proceedings. 20 years ago, I was a young Marine sergeant aboard a patrol vessel near the Carrion Nebula, he began. We received a distress signal from what turned out to be a heavily damaged Alterian transport. Pirates had hit it hard. Lyra's hands gripped the balcony railing. Jake, she whispered. He turned to look at her, really look at her, for the first time since his arrival. I found a young girl hiding in the wreckage, maybe 8 or 9 years old by human standards. She was terrified, couldn't speak our language, but she had these remarkable violet eyes that seemed far too wise for her age. Tears began to stream down Lyra's cheeks. You carried me to safety. You stayed with me in the medical bay until other Alterian ships arrived to take me home. Jake nodded slowly. I wondered what happened to that little girl. The official report said she was nobility of some kind, but I never learned more than that. When I saw you today, something about your Eyes seemed familiar, but I couldn't quite place it until I reviewed the old mission files tonight. You remembered, Lyra said, her voice thick with emotion. How could I forget? That rescue mission changed my life. Seeing the fear in your eyes, then watching it fade as you began to trust me despite everything you'd been through. It made me realize that understanding between our species was possible. It's why I eventually left the military and joined the diplomatic corps. Lyra turned to face him fully. You saved more than my life that day, Jake. You gave me hope that not all aliens were like those pirates. When I returned home, I told everyone about the kind human who helped me when I needed it most. Many thought it was just a child's fantasy, but my father believed me. Your actions planted the seeds for these very negotiations. Jake's eyes widened. I had no idea. The scared little girl you rescued grew up to become an advocate for interspecies cooperation. Every policy I've supported, every diplomatic initiative I've championed, has been influenced by the memory of your kindness. Lyra paused, wiping away her tears. I've spent 20 years hoping to find you again, to thank you properly. Lyra, Jake said gently, using her name without the formal title. You don't need to thank me. What I did was just basic human decency. And that's exactly why it mattered so much, she replied. In my darkest moment, you showed me that strangers could choose kindness over indifference, that different species could care for each other. They stood together on the balcony as the twin moons rose over the capital. Two individuals whose brief encounter decades ago had helped shape the future of both their civilizations. The formal negotiations would continue tomorrow, but tonight belonged to the memory of a frightened child and the human who had shown her that the universe held more light than darkness. In the days that followed, the diplomatic talks progressed with unusual warmth and understanding. Other delegates noticed the easy rapport between the human ambassador and the Alterian princess, attributing it to exceptional diplomatic skill. They had no way of knowing that the foundation for peace between their species had been laid 2 decades earlier in the wreckage of a pirate attack, when a young Marine chose compassion over duty, and a terrified child learned to trust again. The agreement they eventually signed would be remembered as a turning point in galactic history, but for Jake and Lyra, it would always be something simpler and more profound. The completion of a promise made long ago between two souls who refused to let darkness define their universe.